Hey guys, and welcome back to another one of my The 100 review videos, and today we're going to be talking the 5th episode of the 6th season, otherwise titled The Gospel of Josephine. Now, one of the things that makes The 100 a better series on the CW, as opposed to most series on the CW, is that it has a shorter season. This is what I love about briefer seasons. You've got no fillers. Everything is either an explanation or an advancement to the story, and this episode was basically all about the two of them. You've got an explainer for a lot of things. You've got the footage that we watched, which kind of explains a little bit why Gabriel is against these people. And you've got a lot about Josephine, the book, the oblation. But let us though start with the villains of the season, because we've got a better definition of who our villains are. Now, post our introduction to the people of Sanctum, the villains have been presented as Simone and Russell Lightbourne, and of course the other primes being party to this could be considered villains of the season. They're all part of this oblation thing, the concept or the belief by these people that they are presenting their lives, as an offering to the gods, and the gods over here are the primes, whose sole objective is to achieve immortality. But surprise, surprise, the Josephine that we got to watch on the 2nd episode of the season, in flashbacks 236 years ago, she's no longer the same young, vibrant Josephine anymore, but rather a more villainous version of that Josephine. Someone whose core advice is towards the killing of this and the killing of that. A lot gets explained as well. Murphy's death at the beginning of the season, him seeing himself going to hell, that's explained at the very end of the episode. Like, that's exactly why he's willing at the end of the episode to give in to Josephine's offer. Like, hey, do you want to become immortal as well? Oh, I'm listening. That's not Murphy being Murphy, that's not Murphy being an asshole, that's not Murphy selling out on Clarke. That's Murphy basically fearful of whatever it is that he saw when he was dead for those few moments. So yeah, that's another explainer out of the way. That hell thing was not about, bringing religion in on the next season. That hell thing was not about Murphy becoming a drunk or whatever, becoming an alcoholic. But that's really about introducing us to a change to Murphy that would lead him to accepting this offer. Now, whether or not he does accept this offer, whether or not he's just, putting up an act, or he does end up changing his mind, I believe that's an absolutely different story, and I believe it could go either way, even though I would say that after so much development to the Murphy character, it's just not going to go the bad way, or at least not the bad way to the very end, but he's rather gonna play Clarke at some point, or play Josephine at some point, that is. But moving on, we get an understanding of the new flame. Now, the new flame is just like the old flame, except Gaia does make the distinction that we've been making for weeks now. The old flame is about passing down the wisdom onto the next in line, as opposed to the new flame, which is all about keeping it to yourself. So the first one immortalizes the wisdom of previous commanders, the second one immortalizes people who want to live their entire lives as commanders, as rulers of the society and this community. But another thing though that gets explained on this episode is about how all of this started, the process of creating primes, who the first prime was, and that was Josephine. So we've got Jordan and Gaia going to the crypt digging further, and you wouldn't expect Gaia, even Murphy and Bellamy did not expect Gaia to be there, because when you look at her, she was the one talking earlier, or preaching earlier, that these are the religious beliefs of these people, and you kinda gotta respect them. However though, it's her overprotectiveness of Maddie, let's call it that gets her to research all of it, to help Jordan find out more about all of it. So they go into the crib, they end up followed by Bellamy and Murphy. Clarke joins in, or Josephine in this case, even though she's still masquerading to everyone as Clarke, and they basically find the OR where all of it goes down. So it's 25 years after the death of Josephine at the hand of her father, what we watched on Red Sun Rising, the 2nd episode of the season. Whatever he did to her, that was the killing blow. We see Gabriel and we see, the original Russell Lightbourne, and they are basically on one of their attempts to bring back Josephine. They've had so many over the last 25 years, which means that a lot of girls have died in the process in order for them to achieve this. But they are pretty certain it's gonna work, or at least they think they are pretty certain. Gabriel, at the very beginning, is a little bit shaky, and I'm gonna talk about that in a moment, what changed Gabriel in the first place. But by the end of the entire thing, they've succeeded in bringing back Josephine. But let us quickly break down that scene. So Gabriel's talk about the host's neuroanatomy not being mature enough to support the file size, aka the Flame 2.0 or Sanctum's Flame. That's basically talk for you gotta bring them back at roughly the same age that they died the first time around. That does as well explain why Rose was going to be used for someone else, probably someone who died as a child. That explains why Russell and Simone were talking about a long wait, like a 35-year wait, before they could bring back Josephine, in her usual turn, or normal turn. And that's because it's not just about someone with night blood or, black blood being born, but also about waiting for a certain age, probably around the age that Josephine died, or an age at which the host brain is mature enough to be able to take over the data of an older person. So you basically can't download Josephine's data into a child's brain or a teenager's brain, but you can only download it into the brain of someone who's reached a certain age. Now there's another thing about this scene that's worthy of noting, because everyone is probably wondering, are we gonna get Clarke back? Is it possible to get Clarke back? Now the thing is, it seems that night blood is a prerequisite, but what they're doing over here is wiping out the consciousness of the host, wiping out the memories as well of the host, before they end up uploading the memories and the consciousness of a prime into one of these hosts. Now we also know that the girl was still breathing, her heartbeat was still normal, and her brain was functional. The only thing is they did this memory wipe, this consciousness wipe, and that tells us that Russell and Simone in last week's episode didn't really kill Clarke in the conventional sense, like murder Clarke, kind of killed Clarke. And that kind of answers the big question that people have. Could Clarke come back? Yes, she could. Is there a chance that there are residual bits and pieces of her memories, of her consciousness? Yes, there could be. But more importantly, and let's think straight over here, the series has been renewed for a season 7. It's not gonna go on without Clarke. So residual bits and pieces of her consciousness or her memories or not, one way or the other, they're gonna bring back Clarke. And my bet over here is over the Flame, our Flame 1.0. But let us look at Gabriel for a moment though. Gabriel over here is kind of shaky, yet he's a little bit sadistic, which is kind of weird considering what Gabriel is doing at this very day and age. I think all he's doing right now is all about them turning this into some kind of religion. Like, all he did over there was about bringing back the woman that he loved. He kind of reminds me of Jaime Lannister, the things that we do for love. But I don't think that at this moment he anticipated this is going to turn into a cult thing, a religion thing, that these people are going to play gods, that these people are going to turn themselves into gods and create this entire prime religion. So yeah, I think that's what turned him. I think that's what got him to change his mind about all of this. The Gospel of Josephine. The book of Josephine that, Clarke shared with Abby, or Josephine shared with Abby. The oblation by and for the grace of the primes. And I think it was pretty hilarious when Abby started, dissing Josephine right in front of her. While thinking and under the impression that she is her daughter, that she is Clarke. But moving on though to Jordan and Delilah, because this is a core part of how these people are operating. I love how Jordan goes to her mother, and her mother is like, I miss her too, but Priya's return blesses us all. That kind of tells you how much 236 years has done to these people. To be more precise, that kind of tells you how much 209 years have done to these people, since they brought back Josephine for the first time and started this cult, started this religion. But in order of least likely to most likely, we've got 3 options as to who Gabriel might be. The first option is it is someone we haven't met yet, or someone that we would never expect. The second one, and a more likely option, is all about Xavier. The guy who's after Dioza and Octavia, the guy who's after finding out how many more Nightbloods are there within the Earthers who just arrived on Sanctum. And finally, there's the third one, and the most likely option, which is basically Bryson. The guy who met Raven last week, the guy who's not so excited about these festivities, the guy who talks about his mother, her motorcycle, wanting to care for it, seems to care so much for his mother, but at the same time makes it in the end sound like one big act he's putting, because he doesn't care for all these festivities, yet we discovered that he's late for the festivities, he goes in very late, and that's only because the woman who's being resurrected is actually his mother. So does he really not like it just because, he's more grounded than everyone else? Or does he just not like it because he's not who he claims he is? Now there's always the option that it is Xavier or someone else, someone leading Xavier, and Bryson is just one more person who's had it with all of this. He just doesn't like it anymore. He just does not see the point. But that though having been said, and as we get closer to the end of this video, let's, as per the usual, talk all of those stray comments when it comes to this episode. So number 1, we've got Octavia, and she wants to die. That's what we get out of this episode. She does want to die. She feels hated. She might put up a tough exterior, but nonetheless, she feels hated. She feels unwanted. And the straw that broke the camel's back seems to be all about Bellamy, rejecting her, throwing her off that ship, or not allowing her to start with on board of that ship. Number 2, the dynamic between her and Dioza is something that I want to see more of. I mean, Dioza at this moment is some kind of mentor. She's been through it all. She's tried to kill herself as well. She's basically all about the been there, done that, been in the history books with my name and my picture next to the worst people in history, the worst terrorists in history, and we know that about her since last season. Number 3, it is Dioza's talk with her that kind of helps her through, kind of makes her realize that okay, there is something to live for. As long as you're alive, as long as it is not said and done, you can change all of this. Number 4, we've got the temporal flare scene at the end of the episode. Now on the series itself, they haven't explained what that is, but in the works of science fiction in general, time travel or just space travel kind of science fiction, a temporal flare is just like a flare gun on our end, the flare that you shoot using a flare gun. However though, it is one that can burn through space and time, it is one that can burn without oxygen, and it is definitely a lot more powerful with a much bigger heat signature, which explains why the quicksand or the crucible pretty much ended up crystallizing. But number 5 though, there is the part about calling it the crucible, the harder you fight the faster you die. That's basically a reference, the crucible, to Gabriel's favorite play as mentioned on last week's episode. So if we were to try to figure out why this is called the crucible, I'll look into the words of the doctor on last week's episode, because the description fits. It is something that looks like one thing, but it's a completely different thing. But number 6 though, Xavier decides to prove that Gabriel is not after killing people, like Xavier did mention on last week's episode, and that's basically about the time that the shit hits the fan, because when he notices the temporal flare, he decides, I'm throwing you the rope, get out and run. Number 7, there's the bit about Octavia, whatever's going on with her hands, whatever's going on with her in general as part of her being in that quicksand or that crucible when the temporal flare hit, and I'm just mentioning it, but I'm kinda drawing a blank over here. However though, one thought that comes to mind is she's basically that commander, that person that Maddie ends up talking to on the trailer for this season, that she's gonna be talking to on a future episode, the kind of person that we thought might be haunting her, but might possibly be Octavia, part of the change to Octavia's character and looks as well. Number 8, by the end of the episode, Bellamy is paralyzed. He's figured out who Clarke is, but I wouldn't worry about Bellamy. We know from the trailers that he is to get to a point where he ends up choking Russell, so yeah, we're too far from seeing anything happen to Bellamy. Number 9, Abby almost figures out that Clarke is not really Clarke, but rather Josephine, because of the writing with the wrong hand and whatnot. But however though, Josephine is a smart one. She notices that this woman is obsessed with Marcus and kind of manages to diverge her attention elsewhere. However though, as Clarke walks away, or as Josephine walks away, you can tell that Abby is not all free of doubt. She's definitely got some doubt there, but she's definitely as well not paying so much attention towards it. Number 10, we've got Jordan revealing what he knows, and Priam makes him move. I know you miss Delilah, hallowed be her name. And the fake religious talk, of course, does magic to everyone around her. Everyone goes, hallowed be her name. That's how they work it out. That's how they mix it up. That's how they get a mother to, sacrifice her daughter. Your daughter is going to be immortalized. Hallowed be her name. But number 11, by the end of the episode, Josephine has realized that Maddie's got night blood. That's actually a little bit before the end of the episode. Number 12, even closer to the end of the episode, Josephine has realized that Abby is the one who gave Clarke the night blood, so she's got the ability to give people night blood. Number 13, early on in the events of the episode, we get a reference to the play Waiting for Godot, and of course we get a reference as well to the lead character in that play, Vladimir. One who's not just a main character or a core character, but also one responsible for a lot of the advancement of the storyline of set play. Now, there's a lot to build in that play, especially the characters of Vladimir and Godot, but there's not much time on this video to talk about it. However though, for so many reasons, when I'm thinking Godot out of the play, I'm thinking Gabriel, someone whose character is a debatable character, someone whose character is mysterious. We're waiting for the arrival of Gabriel. We've no clue who Gabriel is. Number 14, there's the killing of Kaylee at the beginning of the episode. So Kaylee and Josephine were best friends. Josephine seemed to have killed some person named Isaac, and Isaac is someone that Kaylee cared for. Josephine claimed that he offered himself to Sanctum, that he offered himself to the Prime, part of the oblation, and Kaylee did not believe it because that was not like Isaac, so she ends up killing Josephine in return. Now, as her first order of business, Josephine decides to kill Kaylee in some kind of revenge tactic. So in a way, it feels like you're watching the birth of a psychopath, but then on the other hand, that Josephine realizes that Kaylee in 2 decades is going to come back with another vessel and another Nightblood body. But finally though, number 15, on the trailer of the season, this statement was taken out of context. On the season trailer we hear Russell say these people are dangerous, they'll burn this world down just like their last one, but then on this episode we get the full extent of that statement. These people are dangerous, if they find out we killed Clarke, they will burn this world down just like their last one. So yeah, that guy's got some nerve, that guy's got some sick tendency doing what he does to take some moral high ground in this case. I mean, come on, you just killed the girl. With that being said though, my work here is done. I give this episode a 7 out of 10. I think that Eliza Taylor is just getting into the role, so she's not there yet. I mean, she's trying to be different than the usual Clarke, but she's not exactly there handling this other character. I mean, yeah, she's kind of giving us a different vibe. She's not exactly the same old Clarke, but she's not exactly the kind of different that has us applaud her for being, a great actress. But then again, if I compare her performance as Clarke earlier this season, or on the last season, or on the one before, to her appearance as Clarke on the very first couple of episodes of the series, yeah, that's when I see the potential for her to do better in this new role. With that having been said as well, let me know in the comments down below what you thought of this episode, what your favorite moments out of this episode were, and what your theories about the future of this season happen to be. Let me know as well if you did like this video by dropping it a much appreciated like, subscribing to this channel, and make sure while you're at it to enable notifications in order to get updates whenever I upload a video, publish a new community post, or start a new live stream. But until the next time that you tune in for another one of my videos, the 100 or otherwise, thank you so much for tuning into this video, and have a great day.